Hello and welcome to the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast. Once again, as you probably already know, and I do keep saying it just for those newcomers who might be here listening for the first time, I welcome you. I'm your host, Steve Smith. The heavens have really started to open up and fire across the east coast of Australia. This is episode number 30. Welcome everyone to the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast, and this episode today, number 30, is going to be on the Greenkeepers Shed. That's going to be a big part of this one, and I'm going to talk to you about grass types in different parts of the country of Australia and what that delivers to you as a player and what you need to know and how it's going to help your golf. One of the things I do want to start with, however, is a bit of Australian tournament golf news. And I'm really excited by what's going on. And I have touched on it in Walking the Fairways in a couple of episodes in the past, but I've got a little bit more information that I want to share with you to get you excited, whet your appetite, and really get you prepared for what's coming. And like I said, it's really exciting. And it's in the wake of the cancellations that we've had of the big tournaments in Australia, the Australian Open, the Men's Australian Open, one of the biggest events, and the women's as well. So really disappointing. I've mentioned that before, but this is about looking forward, and there's a lot of good things that are coming through the fog and the mist and the murkiness of those cancellations of Australia's biggest tournaments. And I mentioned last time the start of was called the Sandbelt Invitational, which has the people behind getting this Sandbelt Invitational up and going, and none other than Jeff Ogilvy and Mike Clayton. So two fantastic names in Australian golf pushing this wonderful concept of a tournament. And I'll start off with, we've got some dates. I'll tell you what it's going to be and where it's going to be at. So it's basically the Sandbelt Invitational. That tells you where it is. So we're the Sandbelt in Melbourne, those fantastic, famous, wonderful grouping of golf courses on a beautiful local environment of sand in the southeastern parts of Melbourne around Port Phillip Bay. And it includes a group of golf courses that are part of this 4-day event. And it's going to be 4 days at 4 different golf courses across 4 days. So not 4 rounds at one course, 4 golf courses, 4 different rounds. And those courses that are committed to this year are in alphabetical order. Look, these are some of the best in the country. We start off with Kingston Heath, then we go to Peninsula Kingswood, then we name none other than Royal Melbourne, and finally Yarra Yarra. Now, that's not the order that I don't think they're going to be played in, but they are the 4 courses involved with the Sandbelt Invitational this year. And the dates that it's going to be held on is the 20th to the 23rd of December, so right leading up to Christmas. We've got some really exciting golf happening down there as part of this event leading up to Christmas to finish the year off. So where we were looking at having nothing going on over this summer, we're starting off with a belter of a tournament, and it's one you're going to want to see. You're going to want to be part of. You're going to want to go and soak it all up. And those 4 courses, Kingston Heath, Peninsula Kingswood, Royal Melbourne, Yarra Yarra, honestly, that's a golfer's dream. Just to walk those fairways, just to watch golf, let alone tournament golf in 4 days back-to-back. This is going to be incredible. So that's the first one. I've finally got some dates, and we've got the golf courses they're going to be at. Honestly, we're starting at the top. The Sandbelt Invitational is a mix of men and women as well. And some details that I've also heard about it is it's going to be set up. They're playing together. They're playing mixed, but the par is going to be different for the women and for the men. We've got some new concepts coming out, and this is what's getting me excited about not only the courses they're playing at, because I'm all about the golf courses, but it's also the way the tournaments are going to play and you're going to watch. So all different stuff. That's the Sandbelt Invitational. We talk about the WebEx Players Series at Rosebud for the first one in 2022. It's running from the 3rd to the 6th of February, and it's going to be the WebEx Player Series is across a mix of men, women, and juniors, and the way that their courses are set up for these tournaments are their staggered tees that give different distances of the hole, so a slightly different way of competing. And still, it was great fun last year. We watched it and we really had a good time and were entertained by it. Fantastic and great to see some names that we haven't heard before up-and-coming bright stars in the sport, certainly across Australia. This is really pushing some big names up, giving them great tournament experience where those nerves really kick in and showing them what it's all about and what they can do and what they need to do to get better. Nothing beats experience. Get thrown in the deep end, and this is so good to see. Rosebud, 3rd to the 6th of February, down there on the Mornington Peninsula, further down past the Sandbelt, and that's the first host club, and Jeff Ogilvy will be hosting that event. A little break in between here because the next event of the WebEx Players Series is a month later, but just dropped in the middle, and we've heard an announcement, is the Athena Golf Tournament event, and that's a women's-based tournament for women's golf, rising upcoming female golfers in Australian golf. Fantastic, entertaining, and again, a different concept. This was held at Coolangatta Tweed last year up on the New South Wales-Queensland border. And great golf course, great golf facility. And for the first event for the Athena, really entertaining and really enjoyable to watch. This coming season in 2022, and the dates are to be held on the 26th and the 27th of February. So we're talking 3 weeks after the first WebEx Players Series from Rosebud. We're going to stay in Melbourne. So the WebEx the Players Series is at Rosebud, and then we're going to go to the newly renovated Sandy Links, the public access golf course that we can all go and play anytime we want to. That golf course will be hosting the Athena this year for these young upcoming female stars. This is a WPGA event, and this is good fun. So many different concepts, little one-shot challenges in between. They play some few holes. It's competitive stuff between these young women. It's really enjoyable and entertaining to watch as well. So this one's going to be out there from the 26th and 27th of Feb at Sandy Links. If you haven't seen the pictures about Sandy Links being renovated by OCM, go and have a look. If you've played there, if you want to go and play there, you know what it's all about. You've already done that, and great to see this one hosting the Athena. So that's really good. And then we jump back to the WebEx. So then it jumps to Sydney, and we're going to go back to Bonnie Doon, the same as last year, hosted by Braithen Astor yet again. The WebEx Player Series is on the 3rd to the 6th of March, so a couple of weeks after, what is it, a week after the Athena. We're at Bonnie Doon, and we watch another version of the Player Series competing in the beautiful, fantastically redone Bonnie Doon there on Sydney's eastern suburbs. Great golf course, and another great tournament. So that's in Sydney at the beginning of March, and then a week after that, we're going to a brand new WebEx Player Series event at the TPS Hunter Valley. And they're playing at Oak Cypress Lakes Resort, one of my favourites in the Hunter Valley. A very, very different style golf course that you're going to have seen from all of these events so far. We're going up to the Hunter to a very resort-style course, Cypress Lakes. Very interesting this will be to watch the pros compete and take on this golf course. It's got some really fantastic difficult holes. It's going to be interesting to see how they navigate them. I know them backwards, and I'm really looking forward to this one happening. So that's on the 10th to the 13th of March at Oak Cypress Lakes Resort at the Hunter Valley, and it is hosted by Jan Stevenson and Peter O'Malley. So we've got some really, really exciting stuff happening. So we've gone from the depths of having literally nothing on our plates to all of this stuff starting at just before Christmas, the Sandbelt Invitational, and then we move into the WebEx Player Series and the Athena into the new year. Look, guys, stay glued. You're going to see some incredible golf courses, some you may not have seen before, and all this is going to be playing out with great challenge, great watching the pros carve these up, and you're going to see some really, really good golf courses on television, and ones you can go out and play, which I really do love to see. So great stuff to see. Keep you excited and looking forward to what's happening in tournament golf in the coming summer of Australia. It's so good to see you down here in the Greenkeepers Shed, joining me for another little segment where I can give you some information about grass and your golf. And let's see if we can give you some more knowledge and how to understand a golf course when you're out playing. So on the Greenkeepers Shed today, on this episode, I wanted to talk about grass species or grass type and why. So an example of what I mean, this is probably something you've come across. This scenario, something you've probably seen before. And you may not know why or why not. You may be wondering sometimes why this, why that. What I wanted to talk about and give you some information on is a scenario like this. You've played around a golf and you're probably going, why is the grass on the greens why does it look slightly different to the grass in the rough? Or even the grass on the fairways? Apart from it being cut shorter, it actually looks different. Some people might be out there, you might be wondering, why is it able to be cut so short, like almost carpet or a billiard table, and the other stuff's left to grow a lot longer? Is it the same grass or is it a different grass? What about this scenario? Why does my golf course have a certain type of grass, but when I go and play a friend's golf course, they seem to have a different grass? And then if you're traveling further around the country, you might come across many different scenarios where there's plenty of different types of grasses and you have a different golf experience because of all those different grass types. Take, for example, have a look at some of my friends of the podcast that I've interviewed in recent times. Take Tony Ellis, the nomadic golfer I chatted to a number of episodes ago, who's currently traveling all over the countryside, literally playing and reviewing every golf course he's playing, and they are in the hundreds of courses so far. And I think in his first year, it was 100 different golf courses he played in the first 12 months of him traveling. And he's now just hit the shores of Tasmania. So watch out for some awesome stuff coming from Tony down there in Tassie at the moment for the next couple of months. I think he's down there for. What about my friends Lock and Leash from Finding Fairways Australia? They're in the midst of doing a lap of Australia, playing all over the place. And they've just completed playing the Nullarbor Links, the longest golf course in the world, I might add, with plenty of others so far, which has been great viewing for us in lockdown to be able to see these types of people and, traveling around the country, experiencing different golf. And it's not just that they're different layouts and they're different designs and they're different, shapes. It's that they're different grass types, which also gives a different experience. So if you play in Sydney, metropolitan Sydney, and you go into country New South Wales, or if you play in the Melbourne Sandbelt and you go down to Tasmania, or if you're playing tropical far north Queensland and your next game's in Adelaide, why are they so different? And it comes down to the grass types, along with different heights of cut and the way that certain surfaces are set up differently as well. But the biggest part is grass type. So let's dive into it a little bit, just so you can learn some more about it when you're out there playing. Now, the thing to think about when you're out playing golf is that there are five different major identifiable areas of intense turf maintenance on a golf course. And they are greens, surrounds, which is the green surrounds. That's grass is usually a different preparation as well. Fairways, tees, and rough. They're your five major identifiable areas where we intensely maintain turf. And these areas are governed by, and usually you're able to see the difference in these areas, is by the height of cut and the intensity of maintenance afforded to these areas to provide a playing surface as to what type of grass can be used. To give you an idea, the longer the grass height for play, the more different types of grass species options there are to be used, and conversely, the shorter the grass height of cut, the less grass type species options there are for that particular area. So that narrows down or widens out your options. Now, there are minor identifiable areas, which I won't go into too much for this discussion, and they become somewhat site-specific for each course. But some examples include things like areas immediately around bunker surrounds, around the green collars themselves, for example. Just a couple of really small, different, localized areas that some courses do have, some courses don't have. So we'll stick to the 5 ones for this discussion. Greens, surrounds of greens, which are usually called just the surrounds, tees, fairways, and rough. Okay? Let's start with greens. Often the highest intensity and the lowest height of cut. That's greens. That's a greens turf surface. It's a fine leaf grass type. And that narrows it down to only a certain number and different type of grass species, and they are couch grass, or Bermuda grass as it's known in the US, bent grass, poa grass, which is commonly referred to as winter grass, fine leaf fescues, because there's a number of different type of fescues, but the fine leaf ones are what's used commonly on golf greens. And in the tropical areas of the world, we sometimes see a paspalum variety or a zoysia variety used on greens. And that includes tropical far north Queensland and the like as well. So I want to try and keep this to Australian golf. That's the essence of what I try and talk about the most, is Australian golf. And then there's, in amongst those mentioned, couch, bent, poa, fine leaf fescue, paspalum and zoysia, inside those species of grass, there are a number of different varieties of those species. So, where I talked about bent grass, there's a couple of different types of commercial bent varieties. And there's, one of the modern ones is Pure Distinction. There's older varieties, A4, A1, Penn Links, Penn Cross, Mackenzie. There's so many different types of bent grass. Poa annua, which is winter grass, is usually the one single variety. Fine leaf fescues, there's different blends of fine leaf fescues. You often see creeping red, those sorts of ones involved in the fine leaf fescues. Couch grasses, there's the older varieties of 328. There's the newer ones of Tiff Eagle and Tiff Dwarf and so on and so on. So there are a number of different options within those groupings of those broad names that I mentioned. That's all that really you can use on a green, on a golf green, because of how low we want to cut them. That's what's available, because other types don't like being cut so short, they just won't survive. It's as simple as that, and we won't get a quality surface out of them either. So that's greens. We move on to surrounds of greens. Certainly open to many more options now, because we're increasing the height of cut. And that can be upwards of anywhere of, I've heard numbers of 8 mil to, I've seen 15 plus millimeters. So really fine. And greens, just so you know, we're talking, anywhere from 6 millimeters down to 2.5. You try and, put your thumb and forefinger together or pointer finger together, and 2.5 millimeters, 3 millimeters. That's a very fine, low height of cut for golf green. But surrounds is much higher. And because it's higher and it's a longer leaf, we're open to more choice. Now, along with those ones named for greens, couch, bent, poa, fine leaf fescues, and the paspalum and zoysias, green surrounds are open to a couple of different things, but one that we often see removed is bent grass. That's very, very seldom used on green surrounds, and that's purely because of how much intense maintenance is involved to maintain it on a bigger area yet again. So we often see bent grass removed from green surrounds. But that list now will add grass types like kikuyu and ryegrass. Kikuyu is a warm season grass and ryegrass is a cool season grass. And we see those grasses incorporated where we want to lift and raise the height of cut to a longer leaf. A longer leaf length, which means that these grasses will survive a lot better and can deliver a quality surface at that higher height of cut. Tee areas, they're sometimes grouped with surrounds because we sometimes see that they are maintained the exact same way, usually using the same machines and the same height of cut as surrounds. But we do see those areas using similar types of grasses as surrounds. But one of the main differences when it comes to tees is the specific requirement for a very strong, resilient grass type, because it needs to deal with intense wear by way of foot traffic on concentrated areas. Now, something you might not consider as a golfer is that on a tee, you've got a tee box and a marked area on that tee box to play golf during that day. And that is governed by the markers that are placed down for you to play at, and 2 club lengths behind that. It's basically a rectangular box for golf for that day. That's concentrated wear. Standing, walking, and swinging a golf club. Screwing your feet around, smearing them around. We want to have a grass that's very, very strong, very resilient, but also if it gets damaged, it can recover quickly. So when we do that, we want to really look at grasses which are fast to recover. But there are other things involved with tees that we don't see on a lot of other parts of the golf course. And that is sometimes tees are often put back in little corners. They're in little shoehorned areas, quite often affected by shade. So sometimes you'll see tee grass types change from tee to tee throughout a golf course. Main reason is we're teeing the ball up. So because we're teeing the ball up, we're not often playing off the grass leaf itself. So we can afford to adjust the grass variety to deal with those concentrated wears or the high shade amount that's often cast across some tees. So you might see, for example, on a golf course that has a lot of warm season grasses, sometimes cooch or kikuyu around the place, through their green surrounds fairways and most of their tees. Some of their shaded tees might have a cool season grass on it, just so that it can survive better and stay green and give that look throughout the year, because it doesn't get enough sun for the warm season grasses to survive properly. So you'll sometimes see different grass types used on tees around some golf courses, so they won't always be uniform. And that's okay. Like I said, we're not playing golf with our golf ball on the grass leaf itself. It's more a presentation area and presentation reason for specific grass types there. But to deal with certain specific problems that we don't see anywhere else on a golf course is a very, very high concentration inside a rectangle. Very something that's quite often hard to deal with, and that's why we need often large tee spaces to move those markers around regularly. Now we move on to fairways. And fairways by far are the largest intensely maintained turf area on a golf course, by far and away. That's because of the overall size of the area. You want a grass that needs attention, but can kind of look after itself a little bit. We're not wanting to do as much handwork, if any, on fairways at all, like we do on greens, for example. It's all large scale stuff here. So a strong, resilient grass again works well, but we're not worrying so much about foot traffic. We're more worried about disease and pest tolerance, along with drought tolerance this time. And because of the sheer size of the area of fairways, if we need to apply anything, to control pests and disease, it's an enormous cost quite often. So we want a grass with the lowest chance of getting pest or disease damage that we need to deal with. That's what we're looking for here, looking for a grass that can kind of look after itself a little bit. So you'll often find here in Australia, when it comes to fairways, the most common grass type on fairways are the strongest and most drought tolerant. And that narrows it down to basically just two. In Australia, we mostly often see cooch or kikuyu. Two warm season grasses, and they are the toughest. You'll sometimes see others like fescue at Barnbugle, for example. And we had some in the Blue Mountains. Some of the Blue Mountains courses where I used to work had many areas of poa on the fairways as well because of the cool climate. But often cooch and kikuyu, they're the most prevalent throughout Australia. And it comes down mostly to drought tolerance. And that's fairways. And then there's the distant fifth major identifiable grass area being rough. Now, the rough on many courses will consist of just about any grass, in inverted commas, any grass that will grow. And that's often due to the fact that there is little maintenance other than mowing at a comparatively high height relative to the rest of the golf course, and very little other intense maintenance. We don't really do a lot of pest or disease control, for example, in roughs. It's just not an area of importance in that regard. Kind of looks after itself over there out to the sides. And so we want something that's resilient. Again, it's going to look after itself, but the biggest part is we just want something that's just going to survive. Really, that's it. Now, because of very little maintenance and being in Australia, you will often see mostly warm season grasses most prevalent in rough areas such as kikuyu and cooch again, but you might see other grass types for the rough that include the most coarse leaf type we often hear about, being that of buffalo grass. Now, I haven't mentioned buffalo. It's St. Augustine grass, I think in the US is what they call it as well. But that's probably the coarsest leaf in the turf world of a grass type. And sometimes you'll see that on some golf courses, but we move into all sorts of different things. Generally speaking, it's just quite often a mix of grasses. Now, rough is a little bit interesting because from a playability point of view, it's quite the opposite to short grass areas. And what I mean by that is, where it's maintained well and there's water available and the growing conditions are very good, rough can be quite the challenge to play out of. And where it's a difficult area to grow good rough, it's less of a challenge to play out of. And that's mainly got to do with the density of how it grows. The reason for this is, let's say that it's grown in a drier part of the country and there's little to no irrigation available to the rough. You might end up with wispy, wiry rough that's not very thick to play out of. On the flip side, however, where water is more plentiful due to the climate, or maybe even there's irrigation available, the rough can become thicker. And let's say you play a course where the rough is predominantly couch, it can be quite difficult to hit a shot out of thick couch. Couch, I find personally, couch can be the most difficult to play out of the rough when it's thick and dense. The ball tends to sit down in long couch grass rather than on top of it because it has a fine leaf that isn't really strong enough to hold the ball up, like say kikuyu. When you have kikuyu rough, it's got a much stronger leaf. The ball tends to sit up a little bit more on kikuyu rough in some instances, almost a bit like a tee, which gives you more shot options and club options to play out of. Whereas couch, very soft, fine leaf, not as strong when it's long, and the ball sits down in couch grass. Can be really difficult. Something very good to know when you're out there playing golf, if you can pick the difference. But let's talk about the couch a little bit more with your ball sitting down. If you choose to hit an iron in long couch rough, the soft flowing leaf of the long couch tends to wrap around the iron club head itself, and it moves the club head as you get closer to striking the ball in your swing. And sometimes, ultimately, it gives you less control when you hit your shot. It's often said that if you need to hit a longer shot out of the rough to get to where you're trying to go, it could be the green, a rescue club or a wood with a much larger club head, is a better use club because it doesn't allow the leaf to wrap around the iron head like it does on an iron, I should say. So the wood's a better club for that reason. The other thing about rough is that if it's well maintained and thick as opposed to lesser maintained and thin, when it's thick, there's more grass that gets between the club and the ball when you hit your shot. Now, basically, any grass between the club and the ball will nullify any and all spin control of your shot. You don't often hit a slice or a hook from thick rough, which on one hand is a good thing, but on the other, if you're going for the green, one thing to consider is that your ball will release forwards, meaning it will run out. It'll run and run and run. You'll often find you'll just get one that just doesn't want to stop when you hit it from thick rough, because there's no backspin from your grooves. Because all of the grass is filling up your grooves, wedging between the club head, the club face, and the ball when you hit the ball. One of the benefits of hitting the fairway on your way to the green is ball control, right? That's just one of the main benefits you get. Now, this could be a bit of a stretch, but here's a car analogy for you, because I'm a bit of a car nut, and something that when talking about the rough, something that I'll give you that might help you understand a little bit more of what I mean, that you can, your ball will run out and you get less control out of thick rough. Let's try this one. We'll see how we go here. Think of a club head as the front wheels of the car that turn the car left and right, where the grip of the club is the steering wheel itself that can turn the ball left and right. Your swing is the accelerator. That's how fast you want to go. And the grooves of the club head, the club face, they're the brakes of the car. And the ball, well, it's your tyres of the car. So I've built a bit of a picture there. Let's see if this makes sense to you. Because the grass is short on fairways, your club face and club head will hit the ball directly and cleanly without grass getting between those two surfaces, the club face and the ball. No grass will really get between the two. So you have maximum control of the golf ball. A bit like the difference between driving a car on a dry road and on a wet road. If it's a dry road, you have maximum grip when you're steering the car. If it's wet, that puts water between the road surface and your tyre. So there's something between it. and all of a sudden you have less grip. Now replace that water with grass in the rough, and between the club face and the ball, you get less control because you have less grip. You got something in between them. And when it comes to groove, well, the grooves impart backspin on the ball when you hit it, depending on just how you hit the ball. That's the essence of it that gives you that control. So if you hit a short, lofted iron into a green from the fairway with no grass between the ball and the club face, you can get pretty good backspin, which helps the ball slow down, much like the brakes of a car. Out of the rough, however, when the long, thick grass of the rough gets between the ball and the club, you get very little backspin, and the ball, when it lands, will run forward until the friction of the grass makes it stop. Much like trying to stop a car, if you take your foot off the accelerator and wait for it to stop rolling without using any brakes. That's the same sort of thing that happens when you're coming out of the rough and there's thick grass there. The ball will just run out, and it won't stop until the friction picks up. Eventually, as the ball slows down, friction picks up and it'll stop the ball. If you're driving along and you take your foot off the accelerator and you just wait for the car to stop without using the brakes, it'll eventually come to rest. But it'll take ages. If you've got backspin on the ball, it'll bounce a couple of times and it'll pretty quickly pull up. It's like taking your foot off the accelerator and you put your foot on the brake. It'll slow the car down faster. That's how it works. Very, very kind of similar way. I hope that car analogy worked for you. Probably as clear as mud. But that's kind of what happens when you play from thick rough. And that's why grass type and how it grows and its length matters when it comes to the rough. So now you know a bit about the grass types and how they affect your golf in those 5 major identification areas. Let's talk about different grass types in different regions. Now, there's cool season and warm season grasses, and I've talked about this a number of episodes ago. So you have cool season grasses usually grow well from 10 to 20 degrees maximum, and you have warm season grasses usually grow well from 20 to 30 degrees maximum. So that gives you the regions of the country you want to look at. We often see warm season grass growing very well almost year round from sort of Queensland border, Queensland, New South Wales border, right up north, and that includes up into the Northern Territory as well, and northern Queensland, those sort of tropical areas where it's quite warm year round. Anywhere south of there, from sort of the Queensland, New South Wales border on the east coast and halfway down, you know, the Western Australian coastline, south to the southern parts of the mainland of Australia, we kind of get a funny mixed bag where it's very warm through summer, but through the 3 months of winter, sort of more or less from June to August, we get really cold temperatures. You know, the maximum daytime temperature is pushing around that sort of 10, 12, 13 degree day as a minimum, as a low maximum, I should say, in the depths of winter. So you'll get pretty good cool season growth through winter, and it'll be too hot in summer. And conversely, you'll get great warm season growth through summer, and it'll be too cold through winter. So we kind of get this funny mixed bag where we've got lots of warm season grasses over the broad acre areas, so over the fairways and the roughs, and sometimes in the surrounds and tees. But we can have cool season grasses in the bent grasses and those sorts of things, and the power and the like, on green surfaces. So we can get away with it year round. In the high country of New South Wales and Victoria, we will find that you can nearly get away with cool season grasses year round. They've got a short burst of summer through the peak of summer that's difficult to manage. And we can kind of get away with that sometimes. So that's the Blue Mountains, the southern highlands of New South Wales, that moves into the ACT and the high country of New South Wales as well, and in the northeastern reaches of Victoria too, along the snowy ranges and the like as well. So we're pushing up into some of those areas where we can get away with cool season grasses year round, along with Tasmania as well. But it's very selective. So some of those courses that I talked about, we started to put cooch down, warm season grass in the Blue Mountains in Katoomba where I was. So it's a real funny mixed bag. And then you get the Barnbugles of the world, which is wall-to-wall cool season grass, the northern reaches of Tasmania. So it's really interesting to see where some of these warm season and cool season grasses. So, like I said, we've been using cool season grasses in the Blue Mountains where I was at Katoomba, but we do have warm season grasses. So some people might say, well, why would that happen? And there's drought tolerance, selection reasons, and so on. Likewise, you go up to the Gold Coast, and I mentioned the Glades, where they've got cool season green surfaces when every other golf course has got warm season couch grass green surfaces. So it's really interesting, but it's worthwhile identifying those regions to understand what you're going to come across. The further north from Sydney you go, and certainly from Coffs Harbour north, you'll start to see more prevalent warm season grasses, certainly on greens, but generally speaking across the golf courses. And as we move further south from Sydney, it's a good midpoint on the east coast of the country, you'll see the green surfaces in cool season grasses be very, very great, beautiful putting surfaces. And you'll start to get a mix in some courses of cool season and warm season on those broad acre areas, on fairways and the like. So, like I said, it's interesting. Certainly into Adelaide and into Perth, we get some magnificent golf courses around those regions as well, with beautiful putting surfaces, because they can run cool season grasses in bents, poas, and the like to have their golf greens, and they're fantastic to play golf on. So it's really interesting to see what you're going to come across as you travel around and experience different turf types and what that does to your playing experience on those golf courses. But the thing of note is to understand what they are, and there's nothing wrong with asking the question in the pro shop. Hey, what greens do you have here? We're thinking you're up in northern New South Wales, or you're pushing into Queensland. What are your greens? Do you have cool season bent grass greens, or do you have couch grass greens? That'll give you an idea of what you're going to come across and what your experience will be. Different to, say, if you live in Melbourne and you're travelling to Queensland. You'll start to know the differences. And likewise, if you're going to Tasmania from Adelaide to Tassie, you'll go from maybe warm season grasses around on the fairways. You might go to a Barnbugle and you'll have cool season fescue. It's worth understanding that and then knowing what the differences will be as you play golf around those courses. And like I said, the more travelling you do, the more experience you get under your belt, and the better you'll understand it when you go around, and you'll start to pick those differences and enjoy them. That's the best part. Instead of cursing it and asking why is this different? Why is Kikuyu stopping when I land short of the green by 10 metres? They've got Kikuyu surrounds. Why is it land and pop up and bounce and just pull up straight away? You go to Barnbugle and they land short and they'll release on. Very, very different experience. Very different experience. The same with landing on a couch grass green. It often has a bit more of a bounce surface, and that's through the rhizomes or the way that the root structures work on a warm season couch grass green surface. And if you go and play, say, somewhere in like Adelaide, you get those beautiful cool season bent green surfaces. It certainly has a much more sort of forgiving surface that if it's a little bit wet, for example, you might get a little bit more spin with your short iron shots into the green, and they'll bite a little bit more. It's more receptive to those sort of full iron shots in, depending on how those putting surfaces have gone through. And if it's been a good warm, dry sort of summer, you'll get the bounce on those bent green surfaces with a nice top dressing that they do. The surface is nice and firm underfoot, and you'll feel it start to, that's a bouncy green. That's something that's going to bounce and run and chip along. That's, again, the experience of how does bent change and how do those surfaces change and how are you going to interact with them. So it's worth noting those differences, and it's something good to understand. And I just wanted to give you a little bit more information about different grass types, certainly within a golf course, but through and across other golf courses you play. I hope you got something out of this episode of the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast, and something you can take with you as you travel around as we get towards the end of the year. We enjoy some different golf in different places we don't play regularly. So good luck when you're out there. Ask those questions in the pro shop. They're usually pretty good. They know what they've got out on their golf courses, and they'll give you a few tips and pointers as well along the way. So make the most of it, and it's always good to ask questions. What is it that everyone says? The only bad question is the question not asked. So go out there and ask away and learn something more and enjoy your golf a little bit more because of it. Well, guys, that's the Greenkeepers Shed on this episode of the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast. Stay excited about the new tournament formats that are coming out. Always very, very exciting when we hear those sorts of changes. And like I said, enjoy picking the different grass types out there and how that will play out for your different experience on a golf course. That's episode number 30, guys. I look forward to catching up with you next week, where stay on my social media. There's going to be a few announcements made this coming week, a few changes happening for the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast, and I can't wait to bring you next week's Keeper of the Green. So some special announcements coming soon, and next week's episode, we've got some new changes as well. So stay tuned, come back. I look forward to catching up with you next week with some new stuff going on. You hit him clean and we'll keep him green. Look forward to catching up with you then.